Good evening, everyone. Hello, nice to see you all here. Thank you for braving the rain. I'm Professor Daniel Chua, Professor of Music here at the University of Hong Kong and a Director of Faith and Global Engagement. And welcome to this lecture that we are hosting today. Now, on Wednesday, I gave a lecture. And in that lecture, I explained a particular Greek word. And this is a word that you would find in Plato's Republic. You would also find it in the New Testament. And this Greek word is nomos. Have you come across the word nomos? The Greek word nomos. It means law, the law. That's what it means, nomos. But the word nomos doesn't only mean the law. It also can be translated as melody. Because you know what? Melodies also have laws. Music has laws. In fact, beauty has laws. And in the ancient world, the law and the arts were kind of connected. If you made an aesthetic judgment or if you made a legal judgment, they were kind of connected together. And nomos captured this integration of justice and beauty. It's a perfectly beautiful word, nomos. Now, of course, unfortunately, in the modern world, we have separated this concept. So art and the study of law belong to different places. You go to art school, you go to law school, and aesthetics and the legal world do not really intermingle at all. But then, fairly recently, something quite amazing and astounding happened. Haejin Shim, who is a lawyer and also an advocate for justice, met the world-renowned artist Makoto Fujimura, an advocate for beauty. And you know what? They fell in love. Yeah. They fell in love. And finally, beauty and justice kissed. Yes, I'm sure that's what that X in that title means. They kissed. And so what the modern world had rent asunder, that marriage brought together, right? Isn't that so beautiful? And what was conceived in that marriage was, of course, the theme of this lecture, and also, actually, this book on beauty and justice as well. So, Mr. and Mrs. Makoto and Haejin Shin Fujimura, it's just a bit of a mouthful, actually, to say. So I'm going to rebrand them. I'm going to rename them, all right, the Nomos Power Couple. You're the Nomos Power Couple, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Nomos Power Couple. Welcome.
Okay, it's just one half of the power couple, as maybe. I'm going to speak first, and Haejin will come, and she will have the capacity to really bring it together, beauty and justice. So beauty times justice. We went on this tour as part of our release of this book that came out a week and a half ago or something like that, very recently. But we have been writing this for a long time since we met. We found ourselves in this adventure of understanding my role as an artist and her role as a lawyer and advocate. But I began to see myself as part of her journey and her journey intertwined with mine. So this book is a result of many conversations and many journeys into both the high places of museum world. This is at Gwacheon right now until August. I am having this major exhibit called Dust and Gold, which is sponsored by Art True Gallery in Taiwan, and these are some of the large paintings that I am showing there, and this one's called Tears of Light. And part of what I do as an artist is to exhibit these very large-scale pieces connected with the traditional Japanese way of painting, using pulverized minerals and gold and silver, that same materials that were actually used in 17th century Japan. And my background is both in U.S. educated, in university, but also as a Monbusho or Japanese governmental scholar. I spent 6.5 years studying under master of Nihonga, Japanese style paintings. And so the material I use are Nihonga materials, but as you can see, they are contemporary works, very large paintings. And in this setting, what I do is to present this possibility that beauty can come back in contemporary art, because beauty has been exiled in conversations among serious art people. In the 90s, I was explicitly told that do not use that word, beauty, because you will be misunderstood and people will think that you are trying to bring back this imperialistic past where beauty, especially this cosmetic beauty, was all about showcasing what art can do. Art must have meaning beyond the cosmetic, and so serious artists should not use that word. In my first exhibit in New York City in mid-90s, I had an opportunity to speak about my work. It was an artist talk that I gave, and what I did was talk about beauty. But not from a Western perspective, but from a Japanese perspective of beauty connected to sacrifice, beauty connected to even death, and hopefully gave a new perspective, as it were, in the conversations in New York City especially. Got a call next day from a well-known artist critic, Robert Kushner, in the studio. He was in the audience. I didn't know he was in the audience, but he gave me a call and said, when I quoted Book of Isaiah in that talk as a way to connect Japanese beauty to what our understanding of beauty in the West, that this passage of Isaiah 61 really connects this idea of giving crown of beauty to those who are suffering, those who are marginalized, and those who are in exile. And he called me just to say that he appreciated that somebody was bold enough to speak of beauty in the world that he knew, where his colleagues and friends would not dare speak about beauty. So he ended up writing this critical piece in Art in America, and that's how my career began. So I got to show these paintings in some of the beautiful spaces, what you might call elite spaces in the world, in museums. And my wife, who is a lawyer, takes care of the production side of things, so I don't have to worry about the details. Stay in the studio and work and create works that will call upon beauty in our world, not just in the art world. But then, of course, this passage in Isaiah really frames what both of us are trying to do, and it really awakened in me something that lay dormant as we got to know each other. Isaiah 61 says, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. And it goes on to say, to grant those who mourn in Zion, to give them a beautiful headdress instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the garment of praise instead of a faint spirit. And throughout this book, how we organize this book is based on Isaiah 61. It is implicit throughout this book that as we talk about beauty and justice, as I explain this journey of one who has been called to create beauty and present that to the world, and for Haejin, who has been called as a justice advocate, these two worlds become intertwined in Isaiah 61. And really, at the end of this book, you will see that two worlds are really the flip side of the same coin. And you will find yourself, and I love that Greek word that allows us to see a glimpse into this world that is integrated, where justice and beauty are literally the flip side of the same coin. To bring music into the world requires precision and law, and same thing with any type of beauty. I work with minerals that are pulverized and handmade. I am mixing here in my studio azurite and malachite, which is the way that 17th century Japanese artists mix pigments in the same exact manner, same exact materials. And why I do this intentionally in a world that is, you have so many materials that you can use that will dry faster. I call it slow art, and I intentionally slow myself down to work through my fingers to know what the pulverization of these minerals can bring to the world that has found itself increasingly in a realm of flatness, of digital flatness, especially, and this sense of permanence that digital images, bits and zeros and ones produce, and I am sort of pushing back against that, I suppose. But I've always been interested in somatic way of making. So this is as somatic as you can get with your fingers right into the mix. And I use animal skin glue, which is water-based, hide glue that has been used for hundreds of years in Japan. And so it's a slow process. It builds layers. My paintings require over 100 layers before I begin. So it's a slow process, many times on substrate of paper or sometimes silk, sometimes canvas, because I have to modify what I do in the United States. We live in Princeton area, and my studio is there, and my books explain or describe how the journey of an artist in the context of contemporary art world can become both complicated and but at the same time purified in a way that our modern world contesting in its own complex ideologies and structures, and how my art harkens back to the expressions of ancient ways that connects both East and the West. So same materials, malachite and azurite, were used in medieval manuscripts in European tradition. of illuminated manuscripts that I owe a great deal to in my work. So my work is a bit without categorization, and I find myself really in a way traversing on my own path over the years. I'm very fortunate to have a platform to be able to speak about beauty and to continue to advocate for the creation of and advocate for other people also who have been committed to bringing back either ancient craft or merging that into contemporary expression. And I'm always amazed how human creativity and imagination can move beyond the boundaries that we create in categories and institutional ways that we have to define what is new. And human imagination is capacious, and it can move beyond these tidy categories. And yet, I have seen that in the art world and in education, such an effort to bring into what I call sanctified imagination is really a battle of its own. It has many pressure points. And so we find ourselves in talking about beauty and justice, that this reality of integration is a way that we need to understand society and education and our role in the complex world, the fragmented world, the world that is pulverized, and yet how to create beauty out of the fractures, how to bring that sense of unity in the separated realms. That has been our work. And we have been lecturing on beauty and justice. And one thing that is consistent throughout as we talk about these passages in Isaiah, and sometimes the audience, as we will be speaking to this leadership group tomorrow, and there are many times when we have to translate these values, biblical values, into public sphere. So you will see us using words such as culture care rather than culture wars, such as sanctified imagination or generative imagination, so that we can communicate to a wider audience. And we often think of a way to do this, and one way that I found very effective, I suppose, to raise this issue of what is imagination, that we can move forward in this time, in 21st century, is words of Shakespeare. Today happens to be Shakespeare's birthday. So I want to invoke him, and he has many ways to express imagination in his time, but through his characters, he spoke so eloquently and so urgently, and also in a way that may surprise us. So Theseus in Midsummer Night's Dream says this, and as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them into shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. Now, this is said by a character who is very skeptical of imagination. He is saying that imagination is like a fairy nothing. This is some fantasy that we we might say is real, but we might also say you're imagining things, right? We say those expressions in English language, disconnecting imagination from reality. But Shakespeare, in his brilliant ways, is actually creating a portal into what actual imagination can do. And he's making a case through his flawed character that this reality of imagination has gravity. And in one sense, without imagination, we cannot live. And recent neuroscience research has truly shown that in order for us to wake up in the morning, in order for us to make sense of the world, imagination is the way that we integrate what is so complex and diverse, multidimensional, that allows our minds to connect with our senses. And when we are making anything, whether it be art or music or theater, or if you are cooking, you are integrating your senses through your imagination. And so imagination is not fantasy. It is more real. And this is what Theseus's words here point to. Imagination bodies forth, right? The form of the things unknown. And the poet then turns them into shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. You couldn't have put this any better than Theseus here, of the reality of incarnation coming into local habitation and a name, giving our experiences and giving us a framework where we see this foundational reality of all knowledge and how we can, as people who have been given this gift of imagination, to enact upon this unknown reality, somewhat wrestling with the fears and anxieties of our age, and still be able to construct, reconstruct, and reimagine a world that becomes our future. And that's what artists do well, is to bring about this new way of understanding and grappling with and discerning what is it that we are thinking and how do we see the world in a capacious way that allows our reality to move from, let's say, fantasy, where this idea of dream, Midsummer Night's Dream, is just a sheer fantasy that is dreamt in somebody's mind, to realizing that on the stage of life, that this upside down kingdom, as you might say, reality, breaks into this stage of life. And what we imagine actually is the substance of things hopeful, the evidence of things unseen, as the writer of Hebrews attests to. This imagination is connected to faith. And the faith is a window through which we invite this reality that seems to be airy nothing, but we invite them into our domain, on the reality, the stuff of life, the materials that I use. And I am given this privilege of giving that reality a local habitation and a name. So in this way, we journey into our work of beauty and justice together. And as I have gotten to know Haejin's work, which she will share now through Embers International, and I have found myself drawn into a local habitation name that I did not foresee that I would be entering into. But this work in slums of India has become a place that I bring this integration of perhaps the refined ways that Japanese art has brought into my work, and that work of integration now continues into some of the darkest realms that we get to participate, not just to serve the mothers and children there, but to find this local habitation in a name that has given me hope for how I might create something that is deemed beautiful in the highest realms, by connecting that to the darkest realms, really fulfilling what Isaiah 61 speaks of, the possibility that all of us can become part of this movement of the spirit that moves into the most difficult realms in the world, and to create beauty there. So, Haejin.
Thank you. So when beauty kisses justice, you will see shalom. The word justice in Hebrew Bible, there are two words. But then in Greek, as we were talking about Greek, it's a dikaisene. Dikaisene in the New Testament, in this Greek word, is translated into simply justice or righteousness. But in the new translation by N.T. Wright, a great theologian of our time, he actually translated that word into a dozen different words within the context. So it could be justice or righteousness, or it could be God's redeeming plan, God's redemptive work. And because this word justice, or dikaisene in Greek, is beyond just correcting the wrong or rescuing people who have been damaged, or even simply bringing a problem or case to a court. It's so much more than the simple legal system that we understand. It actually is an invitation for God, for us to co-create with Him towards the redemptive word. So in this book, we go through that a little bit as a kind of entryway for you to understand the deeper meaning of justice. But when people ask me, why did you become a lawyer? Why did you become a justice advocate? And working in not only in the elite court system in America, but also in the slums and the red light districts of poorest communities around the world. My answer is not because I'm seeking justice, but because I am seeking beauty. And the reason why I say that is when we think about justice, and I ask you, we have about, 80 people here, what is the definition of justice for you? Out of 80 people here, I'll probably get about 120 definitions. Because we all carry with us certain assumptions and biases when we think about justice, what we want justice to look like. But if we can just maybe step back and think about what is injustice, perhaps let's think about a picture of injustice. you're probably thinking about a situation where a relationship is damaged, something that is supposed to be flourishing is not, something that has been promised and was hopeful is no longer. And these are the situations where we see something that is meant to be beautiful has been violated, lost, or damaged. So when I was called to be a lawyer in the beginning, I was able to sense this fracture in this world. And the lawyer's call, and ultimately justice advocates' call, to be part of not only just solving the problem, but being part of the redeeming what has been broken into renewed beauty. So when we think about human beings, our individual selves, as someone with a sacred worth and value, and then we enter into relationship with one another, with the nature, with the world, we think about this relationship. We want that to be flourishing. We want it to be beautiful. But so many times we see it as broken and as limited. And in that situation, lawyers and those who are called to seek justice have a role to play, to bring not just correction, but something beautiful. Leslie Newbigin is this great brother of ours who have given us a beautiful legacy. And this is something that my organization, Embers International, we cite very often. The deepest motive for mission. And mission simply means to be sent out into the world, to do what you're called to do. Whatever the stewardship responsibility that you have, whether that's making music, art, creating programs, systems, businesses, you are sent into the world for your stewardship. And if that motivation, if that is simply the desire to be with Jesus where he is, if you share the faith that Mako and I have in this Christian faith, this is where we want to be. And where is he? He is on the frontier between the reign of God and usurped dominion of the devil. He is everywhere. However, he's also very present in the darkest realm. If I can ask you to imagine a situation where a young child has been trafficked in a really difficult situation. And I think our friends have done a great job educating the world about modern slavery, that slavery still exists. And it is a heartbreaking reality that now our generation actually has the most number of slaves in human history, and that is 50 million people. When we know that the entire population of Canada is just short of 40 million people, 50 million, it is a massive number that we want to do something about, because we don't want this to be our generation's legacy. But even within this a situation of injustice, a desperate injustice, there are a group of people who are also forgotten even within that, because the situation is so hidden. It is so under the ashes. If you can imagine a child who was trafficked at a young age and was left behind because she was never rescued, and she has to survive in a violent situation for many years. And in that situation, she becomes a mother. And she becomes a mother as a result of violence. And now, the child that was born into this brothel, she becomes now second and third and fourth generation. In this situation, if you are thinking about just an individual rescue, we can have a child in safety. However, the relationship that was already given at birth with the mother will be severed. So Embers International was called to serve these families where generations of women and children are in a traffic situation. And our goal is to rescue the whole family together and journey with them for a very long time so that they can be not only healed individually, but also be formed into being and becoming secure base for each other. Therefore, this family will become the first generation of the 1,000 generations of blessing in the future. So currently, we have the privilege of serving 120 children, 80 mothers, towards thousands of generations of blessing. So when we look at our mothers and children who are journeying towards this restoration, journeying towards theikaisane, we declare from the very beginning that they shall become the first generation that will bring thousands of generations of blessing. And this journey from generational bondage to intergenerational freedom and flourishing is slow, like Mako's slow art. It takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of courage. And that courage comes from this truth. In John 10, Jesus was teaching his disciples, and he said this: the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. And this is a picture of injustice. This is a picture of broken beauty. Individuals, relationships, our relationship with nature has been destroyed, stolen from. But then what is the antidote to this? And this is where our imagination needs to be embraced. Because Jesus did not say, I am going to stop the thief from killing, stealing, and destroying. Instead, he said, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. His antidote is abundant life. And I want to invite all of you to imagine what abundant life looks like. And I'm sure it involves music, art, great food, great relationship, community, joy, shalom. Against the thief that comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and drive us into the deception of reductive life, of a scarcity mindset, of transactional relationships. Jesus says, I'm going to give you abundant life. A life that generosity is an essence. A life where beauty becomes generative, that it gives birth to more beauty. Many of you are parents here, and you know that when you have one child, and then you have another child, let's say you have 5 children. Do you need to share 100% of your love equally to 5 children? So you give 20% each? Probably not. You give 100% to each of the children. And how do you do that? Because the more you love, the more love you can give. love grows, and beauty also grows. These are the beautiful children and some of our staff who are serving. We have a staff of 40. Most of them are on the ground where we have our center, and we provide education and restoration in this journey into generational flourishing with a very innovative model of a whole family restoration. But what we do is we wanted to give the abundant life to our children who are born into a really difficult situation. So we send them to private school outside of the red light district so that they can experience life that is not where they're from. But then they get to come home and share that story with their mothers so that their bonding will continue. But in a dark place, when you're called to steward and reclaim beauty, you need a lot of, really, imagination. This is abandoned former brothel that Embers was called to start imagining. When we were there, I was asked this question: what do you see? Can you see beauty behind the ashes and brokenness? And we said yes. And we built the center where we get to serve the 120 children and the mothers. And I think this is what sanctified imagination does, where we can see beyond the ashes and start imagining the abundant life that seems to be taken away. And that happens because we can see our humanity and the essence of our humanity as beauty. Therefore, the work of justice is restoring that beauty that leads to shalom.
It is true. I mean, looking at that, the whole verse about the crown of beauty instead of ashes, right, really comes true. And one thing I wanted to maybe just mention, and I think is very important about beauty here, is that what you do when you think about beauty is that there is a kind of standard about beauty, right? It's not, you're not just doing anything, you're just trying to do the best in a very difficult situation. But what is it about beauty that enables you to, as it were, do more than just the basics?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank the Wind Rider production film team, this award-winning film team that came with us to India to film this. And we're working on a new feature film called Slum Pastor, which will take some of these footages and new footages as well to create a story like this that is compelling and that is beautiful. Requires quite a bit of skill and sacrifice on their part to be part of this journey. So I want to thank them today and acknowledge their gift to us. I think part of the challenge is that we live in this assumed scarcity reality. So everybody has this notion that beauty is something that is nice to have, but it's, something that requires extravagance, and you don't have the luxury, right? And just as Theseus is complaining about, this fantasy, this airy nothing, the Shakespeare is using those words to say that even in that time, this was the challenge, was to see when Shakespeare was writing, there's a time of Black Plague. If there ever was a scarcity mindset operating in fear and anxiety, it would have been his time. And yet he's using his characters to say, imagination has a power to embody something that is more abundant, more needed in terms of what that embodiment can do, is to give reality that is broken and is fragmented. All of its characters are flawed, and yet this local habitation, the name, is that they become a portal into this new reality. Magically, on stage, you see that art is a way to do that, but to remind us of this place of abundance. And so that is it's a very same issue that humanity has always wrestled with. Today, it's possibly more accentuated because of technology and industrial revolution, bringing in this notion that utility and efficiency is the only way to lead to success. As individuals, as nations, we do resume building, and yet that comes with its own trapping of this scarcity mindset.
We had this a girl who was rescued, and she was asked this question: now that you're free, what do you want? First of all, this question itself is impossibility, because girls in places like India are never asked that question. What do you want? What is your dream? And then on top of that, we're talking about this girl who are rescued from a really violent situation. But this particular girl had an answer. And I think she had an answer for all of us. And we do write about that in this book. She said, now that I'm free, I want to be beautiful again. And I think we have this desire to be beautiful as human. And the beauty that has been broken because of violence that is done to her, she wants that to be restored. I think because I believe in the faith that we are created to be imago Dei, the image bearer of God, God, the creator of the universe, God who is not only source of love, but love itself, not only source of beauty, but beauty itself. So if we are created in the image of God, and God did not create us because he needed us, he doesn't need us, but he created us out of pure joy, pure love. If we believe that, that means we are created out of extravagant love, for extravagant love. Therefore, when humanity is broken, the only way to restore that is through extravagant love. The hole that we have in our heart can only be filled with that extravagant love. Therefore, when we do anything to help one another, I think there's no other way to do it but abundance, with beauty, with the extravagance. Anything short of that actually does not reach the kind of shalom, kind of justice, kind of restoration that we desire.
So beauty, in a way, is, I think it's very clear, is not an added extra, right? It's actually foundational, but it's not just foundational. It's about abundance. In other words, it's as you're saying, the new creation is so much more, right? And these things, and I could see that when you were doing the artwork here, when you were doing that the famous Japanese, what do you call that?
Kintsugi.
Yes, where you're sort of adding gold, right? And that to bring that cup or that broken plate back together, it is so much more than what it was before. It's more than a restoration in a way. So it's amazing to see that. I just want to give some time to absorb all that, because obviously it's a very hard-hitting film. But actually, it's now a time for questions. And the FGE scenario, we always have 3 rules, A, B, and C. A is please be articulate. So please formulate your question clearly before asking it, okay, and wait for a microphone so we can hear it. B is please be brief. We have very little time, actually, about 20 minutes. So this is not a time for you to give a sermon, okay? So just a very short, sweet question. And C is please be centered. Please ask a question that's being raised by the things that were being shared today. It's not time to ask, about how to buy Marco's artwork or anything like that. Okay, and how much it costs. Okay? Don't do that. Okay, yeah. Okay, so because there's very little time, about 20 minutes, so please be quick with your questions. So are there questions in the room? There's one here, and there's one there. So if we bring a mic in the front and the one back there, or 2 back there. Okay, but we'll have the one in the person in the mask first. Yes, what's your question?
Thank you very much for your great presentation. It's very amazing. I like the frame very much. And my first question is, what is your definition of beauty? And according to a Vestic theologian called Blazar, he defined beauty, as far as my limited understanding, is Christ-related beauty. What's your definition? First question. The second question is, what is your biblical support for you to link these 2 concepts, beauty and justice, together? As far as I understand, one verse I can remember is in Proverbs 31:30, chapter 31:30. Charm is deceptive, and beauty can be fleeting. So yes, it can be negative. What is your biblical support? 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have written 5 books, 6 books here, and tried every book to define beauty. You can go through my books to find various approaches to answering that question. It's a very complex question. I have written a book called Beauty, Silence and Beauty, in which I explore very much the Japanese way of defining beauty, very different from the cosmetic, let's say, Western values that we often think of when we talk about beauty. Yes, biblical word beauty has multi definitions, and although one that I think, it's a part of your problem in translation, that passage in Proverbs is talking about cosmetic beauty specifically. So not this accentuated reality or definition of beauty that comes from Shalom. That's the connection between beauty and justice to me. What I have come to terms with is, I mentioned that in this book, is that definition of beauty without dealing with brokenness and darkness, the darkness that you see in the film, that we are confronted with this reality of people marginalized and people who are oppressed and in violent situations, without accounting for that in some way, and dealing with restoration, and also this viewing each child, each person as Imago Dei. Without that peace, beauty, no matter what the definition is, will fall short. So I am most satisfied with this book in terms of beauty that needs to be expressed in actual way of love. Beauty that is appears in the darkest realms as a candlelight that shines light, revealing both evil and darkness, but also the reality of human potential.
And one thing that we explore in this book is how our English words are very limited. So it's really hard to capture the depths of these words and how we also live in this paradox, how we are, the humanity is imago Dei, most beloved of God. At the same time, we are desperate sinners. So we live in this paradox, and beauty as well as justice can be manifested and understood in different ways. So I think in this book, what we are talking about is rather than defining those terms with very limited English language, we talk about the essence of those two.
Yes, there's a question in the front here.
Yes, thank you. I'm really inspired and moved by your sharing. I'm actually wrestling both with beauty and justice in my life and career, because your work, Embers International, is really in the frontier of the spiritual warfare. So how do you wrestle? How do you survive this? Because I once also worked in similar context, and it really pained me to see a lot of my colleagues later actually left church, because they were really in the middle of that spiritual warfare. So how do you kind of protect yourself? And also, I'm also a theater director, so I'm also wrestling with arts, because you spend so much time and efforts in creating a piece, and people may only spend a few minutes, or to say seeing a show 2 hours, and at this point, I sometimes cannot justify. As an artist, you spend so much time in creating a work, and how much life does it really change a person? And so are there times when there's self-doubt, and is there meaning in spending all this time, and how much am I changing lives? So really.
I want to share, this is German philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. I'll probably butcher his name, but that's okay. He said this: a man should hear a little music, read a little poetry, and see a fine painting every day of the life, in order that worldly cares may not obliterate the sense of the beautiful which God has implanted in the human soul. And I'll say the same even beyond that in human relationships. And art, and especially good art, has the power to remind us of who we are becoming. And that reminder of beauty is essential in our not only survival, but in our stewardship towards that abundant life that God has called to give us. God has called to give to others as well. So I think what you're doing is actually not, again, accessory or luxury, but essential.
So I have spent time wrestling with your question with actors and dancers, oftentimes backstage. The two ways that I think I have learned is that one, oftentimes human heart cannot take the successes of what we promote or we seek. And I found people who perform in the most magnificent ways that they have wanted to all their lives, and they have reached that summit, and backstage they're weeping. And you understand that, because that's the reality of performance. We give ourselves away, and then when we are able to do that fully and in a way that even surprise ourselves, we feel this emptiness because we have given so much, given out so much. And that's a reality of performing arts But I also know situations where, you build a stage and you work so hard rehearsing and nobody comes. I have been there many times myself as artist. That's not so unusual, actually. Many people work all their lives. If Scott Fitzgerald died having sold Great Gatsby, 7 copies. Herman Melville thought he was an utter failure when he died. Emily Dickinson did not publish, the one that she published, the editor took away her half rhymes and dashes. She never published again. So that's the reality of many artists. And yet, I do wonder when Theseus says, imagination bodies forth the shapes of things unknown. He's reaching into this reality of particularity that only a person who is playing Theseus knows, that he is bordering on this portal. He's edging toward it, and he's trying to make sense of something that his imagination cannot access. So this airy nothing, right? That the poet's pen turns into shapes. That's like to him unreachable. And yet Shakespeare makes it reachable on stage. That's the reality that only the audience can reach. They complete the sentence. They say, yes, this is not a dream. This is a reality that pours into the particularity of a flawed character on stage. And we can see that, and we can say, and not only agree that is transcendent, that gives me hope, that my dreams, my fantasy, my airy nothing can become a reality through the particular, this person. But also that there is something about the created order and the substance of things to hope for, that particular reality that only you know, only you can do, and only I can fulfill, that God will create something, new creation out of. And that would not be if you didn't step forth in faith and create something that only you can do, only that actor can play. And I often think about that reality because, at the end of the day, we don't know what our work will bring, whether it will be received, or even if it is received well, is it a type of reception that borders on this cosmetic, superficial success. People may applaud, but are they really getting it? What we are intending to communicate. And so I think we cannot judge ourselves on to see how our works have given meaning to the world, because that is a judgment of time, and and even if we have given our best and 7 copies of a novel sold, these examples tell us that these works are timeless, and they have values unto themselves. And I always think about Emily Dickinson's, some of her letters indicate that she believed that someday people will read her poems. And she even hid them she created fascicles, these stitched volumes, and she hid them underneath her bed. Only later on, her sister discovered them. And I just think about that, this daringness of her to audaciously say that I believe that these poems will be read 100 years from now. And I'm going to hide them to make it impossible to find. I just think that is, that gives me at least this audacious way of thinking about certainly what I do as an artist, but art in general, that, there's more to it. There's always more to it than we realize. Yeah.
Are there other questions? I think we have questions here. Maybe we'll just have 2 questions and then we'll see how far we can go. But yes, a question from...
Yes, thank you very much for the sharing and the film, and it's very touching, especially the focus on hope when we are seeing despair, which are different circles going down and going up. And I would like to dig a little bit deeper into the Kinzuki concept, because we just went my wife and I just went on a trip to Kyoto to learn about Kinzuki. So we were doing the process and so on. And I was reading a little bit of your book. You also mentioned that there's this chemical, that leca, that's urushi or something like that. Urushi, which is actually, when we sit down and do it, we actually spend so much time just doing that. It's actually adding a little bit of water, and then it's urushi is actually like the glue that you need to take a lot of time, a really long time to really do it, and then you cannot do it too fast. And that's the interesting thing about that was what I was trying to learn about Kinzuki. It's actually the time that you actually spend on it. And to me, going through that process of, let's say, having something broken, I was exploring concept about grieving. I was exploring concept about anger. But this process of Kinzuki, obviously making go.
You need to get to your question very fast.
It's actually I was indicate and then hear how you think about it. It's actually about time. It's about changing of time to actually and give you time to heal, and give you time to do the whole process, because the whole process is 7 days plus 7 days plus 7 days. So many days before you can actually get that done. Can you share with us how that?
Yeah.
So that's a slow question.
Yeah.
But I want to get all the questions in first, and then we answer.
Great.
All right. So there's another question over there, and also one there. So we'll have this question, a quick question.
Okay. Mr. and Mrs. Fujimura, tonight I really personally feel the partnering of beauty and justice, which I never had before. But to me, beauty is something very emotional, something need to be felt only. Justice is something you really need to be physically seen. So tonight, I would like to ask about your mission, the Amber mission. How do you actually, in a very poor and very sort of upset situation like Mumbai, because they have different culture, they have different value, their definition of beauty and justice are different from your mission. How do you talk to them? How do you change them?
Yeah.
That's a good question. And one more question. So one more question.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you. It's my honor to listen this in and take this in. And I can see how the whole Amber's international mission is a reflection of Isaiah 61. It's such a beautiful, it's the whole passage. So I'm like really intrigued by that. So I wanted to hear from you anything that you want to encourage people who are being, like they see the systemic issues and they find it's hard to actually break free or even imagine beyond it. So how is that imagining process looks like, that you coming from the US or from Japanese culture, you're actually able to see forth and create something that truly brings hope to these people there. So yeah, just curious about the process.
Okay, thank you for those questions. So it's about slow art,
Yes.
and then about, how do you define beauty and justice, particularly in that context of India, and then how do you just imagine yourself out of a systemic situation where you cannot imagine how to get, how to solve these problems. You can answer one or all or none.
Okay, yeah. And New York Yankees, thank you for supporting my team, who won yesterday. No, about urushi. Urushi, Japanese urushi, and it flows out of Korea as well, and China is an extraordinary medium, and I write about that in my other book, Art Is, because not only for a week, urushi master takes sometimes years to just get one joint right. And so it is a slow process, and it is a medium through which it's actually more expensive than gold. And it takes great deal of sacrifice to create 1 ounce of urushi. And so going back to the question about communication and difference in cultures and so forth, we have found that certainly any definition of beauty and justice is incomplete in any language, any culture. But what happens when we cross culture, our attempts to understand, to learn from other cultures, such as this remarkable history of urushi, Japan lacquer, and this remarkable reality that is in front of us with our 120 children, is that they teach us that integration. They're the ones that has the answer, in a sense, that we don't. And by loving them, they are able to have this confidence to live out in their own way, in a sense, to redefine those terms.
In different cultural contexts, you may see the manifestation of justice or beauty being different. But the essence of justice is actually right relationship. Right relationship that leads to flourishing. So in any context, I think we can see what flourishing relationship looks like. The problem is we have never seen it, actually. We see glimpses of it. I see a glimpse of that flourishing relationship in our marriage, but this is not even complete. We're both still sinners, fully beloved, but still struggling. So that's where imagination must come in, to be able to imagine that flourishing state. Otherwise, we won't be able to accept this reality, because this is not the end. But without imagination, this will be the end. And so in a situation of this massive problem that we face, I think one of the things that we must think about when we think about hope, pursuit of hope and shalom, is lamentation. We have to be willing to lament and grieve while pursuing hope, justice, beauty. And I think the more that we do this, we think about this, our imagination gets sanctified. Our ability, our capacity to lament and rejoice at the same time increases. And I think that's the life that will fulfill us and gives us satisfaction. I see our children laughing and learning, but at the same time, they have to go back to the brothel. And I must pray every night that they will be kept safe, that they will be Daniels in lion's den. And they have been kept safe by God's grace. Yet, I still lament over that situation while rejoicing with them for that another day of thriving and learning and restoration. So, and I think we get to do that every single day as we practice them more and more. Our capacity to also face that massive problem in this world will increase. I think the last thing that I want to mention is that when we look at this broken world or broken relationship or humanity, I think we have done a fairly good job analyzing the problem, analyzing and diagnosing it. I think we want to be the problem solvers, right, of those issues. But many times, unless we think about the abundant life that Jesus came to give us, an extravagant love that we are created with and for, we forget that we are actually not called to look at this broken world as a problem to solve. It's actually beauty to behold. It may be broken, but we must behold like kintsugi. And then we can mend it. We can problem solve. We can diagnose it. But we can be courageous to give ourselves, pour ourselves into the fractures of this world as urushi. And then the gold can be added onto it.
That was a very beautiful ending, right? Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our Nomos power couple. Thank you so much.